Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. No, you didn't pronounce well, but you are apologized because I found very few people in all my career that pronounce well at the first time. You have to think French, not Spanish. I am Italian, but you have to think French is Jahier. So that's it. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, 30 years ago, on the 9th of November 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. And this has become very rapidly the real symbol of the reunification of Europe. As it was already remembered by the previous speaker, this year has seen many, many other events that create this reunification of Europe. But finally, many events has prepared the followed until also the end of the 1989, when also Ceausescu was sent out of his buildings. But the 9th of November 89, with the fall of the Berlin Wall, has become the real symbol of what happened in Europe in this moment. The ones that push Fukuyama to write that it was the end of the history, because it was the winning phases of the West on the East. I clearly remember the excitement I felt as I watched these historic events. I was in my home, I was alerted by colleagues, I went to the TV, and of course, this was something that we can never forget. Thousands of people statically swarming to the wall, claiming overheat, chipping away, and with hammers, hugging total strangers from the other side, hugging fellow human beings, and reunifying what has been divided for so long. Very few saw it coming. Very few anticipate such a rapid implosion of the communist bloc in the Eastern Europe. Many have worked for this. But finally, in '89, everything went so fast. Even the day before the event of the Berlin Wall, as other events all around Europe, no one was capable to anticipate, to expect, even to be in favor of this. The Iron Curtain has been cemented in European conscience for so many decades. It seems an unmovable, glaring scar, reminding us of war, of human failures, and of our incapacity to find joint solutions to European challenges. The dismantling of borders, which then was a dream that became reality, allowing finally Europe to grow together, to further the project of unity, peace and prosperity, which is still at the heart of our European Union today. Many reasons have been put forward for this peaceful revolution, an enormous revolution with finally quite no death. A lot of people have been arrested and injured during this process, but if you look to other revolutions, historically any revolution has been an armed revolution, even went through civil war. Think to the French Revolution, just to mention one, but so many others, or the Civil War in the America, or many others. This has been a peaceful revolution, and so many reasons, including Gorbachev's political shift, economic challenges, the pressure of the Reagan administration, the inner party struggles within the leading party of the GDR, and the mass exodus of many qualified citizens via neighboring countries, for example, through Hungary. But most and foremost, the Berlin Wall fell as the many other borders has been broken in Europe for the immense desire and love for freedom of normal people in the east side of Europe. That has been the force that has broken the wall. That has been the force that has allowed millions of people to make the human chain, the Baltics. That has been the force that has created the defeat of Ceausescu in Romania, and everything has been the force of people. People and organized civil society, not the political leaders. Yet the actual drivers which pushed tens of thousands of citizens to protest and dream a new future were organized civil society movement and churches, which encourage engagement, offer the platform for joint action, and make an organization, articulation of citizen demand. For it is indeed true, Europe was and is driven from the bottom up. It is driven by civil society. And those events, it's very clear to all of us today, swept across all Europe and all the world a wave of optimism. Come back to this day 30 years ago. And that was an enormous and incredible, the dividend of peace. Anyone was thinking that this should have opened a fantastic era. And it has. It has. We spread a lot of energy that allow the largest growing ever of our society, opening of our society, of our markets, and longer periods ever of economic growth worldwide. In these past 30 years, more than 1.5 billion people worldwide came out from poverty and entered in the middle class worldwide. Yes, of course, there has been the raising of China, of India, many others. But the world has changed radically, without mentioning the enormous change also in the east part of Europe, with countries as Poland, but also Romania and others. So the salary, the wages, the condition of people that has been multiplied for 3, for 4 in 30 years. Incredible. However, 30 years later, we are faced with the irrefutable truth that it is not by dismantling physical borders that barriers automatically disappear. The borders and barriers of the mind remain strong, sometimes even more strong than the physical one. And such barriers have a great impact on our European Union, its economy, its social tissue and culture, restricting our freedom of thought and ultimately also our capacity to go to action. In this year of commemoration, I thus decided to initiate a series of visits on the subject of border and peace in Europe as President of the EESC, taking a closer look at some of the many existing borders of Europe and examining the very notion of peace. For the European Union is a peace project. We look back on the 70 years of peace, and we can be proud of this achievement. It's the longest period of peace, not only of the absence of war, in the European history ever. Allow me to point out, of course, that the memories of violent confrontation are still very much part of our realities, alive not only in the memories of the generation which still experienced the World War II. They are alive in the history of the citizens of former Yugoslavia and in the memories of the terror in Northern Ireland, in the experience of the refugees who seek a safe haven here. And the Cold War was certainly not peace, just the absence of armed conflict. In the framework of this Border and Peace in Europe project, I thus visit the first Belfast in Northern Ireland in June, highlighting the relevance of this border in the ongoing Brexit negotiation and the very real threat of a reigniting intra-community conflict. You know that in this part of Europe, 90% of the kids are still going to confessional school. The Catholics are going to the Catholic school and the Protestants to the Protestant school. You know that in this city, during the night, door or some borders are closed between the two communities. Or walls are still existing that are higher, not to allow from houses from one side to launch stones or other on the other side. It seems to be a little Gaza, or Bethlehem, or others. During this visit, I sat, for example, in a room with women who had been involved in a EU-funded project for peace, women of both community. And one of these women says, they, pointing out on the other side of the room, the Catholics, are not to be trusted. They do not belong here. The voice of this mother still resonates in my mind, pointing out just how fragile peace is in a place that once, not so long ago, was devastated by religious division and psychological borders. The mother has indeed changed a little bit her mind because she cooperated with the Catholic mothers in concrete project, thanks to this program. But the force of her words, because after, of course, you say, I'm not referring to the mom in this room, but the Catholics as a category. And the same came to me when I met another project, also funded by the European Union, of giving the youth a possibility to meet and to do something together. And the youth of the lower classes that never met together. And there was a couple of young. She was 16, he is 18, and they become fiancés. One was Catholic and the other Protestant. And they tell to me how it was difficult to tell to the family that they were together as fiancés. And they was thinking to move out of Belfast to have their love a future. It's Europe. It's not Rwanda, Burundi, or Kashmir, or another part of the world. We must be very careful of our own contemporary European arrogance, thinking that war cannot ever happen again on our soil. In this part of Europe, it will be very easy to restart a civil war, very easy. And some violent facts that happened in the last month have demonstrated that this fear is even very, very in mind of the security forces and the police that is controlling the situation. I then traveled to Sopron in Hungary this September, the site of the pan-European picnic 30 years ago, where the Austro-Hungarian borders was at the end opened. It was not opened for an idea of opening the borders. It was opened for economic reason, because it was an armed border, an iron curtain with gun machine, automatic gun machine on both sides, and there was a need to repair after 30 years this system, and there was no money to do on all the borders. So they have an hard decision, or they have to repair, or it was becoming too much dangerous because it would have been activated without even people. So there was a need all to stop, all to cut, all to find money, and the Russians were not delivering money to restore this border. But in any case, so there was also a practical thing for this demand. But here, thousands of German citizens crossed the border because, as you remember, the Germans of the East, the Ossi, were not allowed to go to the West. They were allowed only going through other countries. And so some country became a sort of gathering of people that were meeting because they were not allowed family to reunify. And this has been defined as the first stone of the reunification of Germany, because thousands of East Germans passed this border and reunified in the West Germany. After there has been many others, small borders that have been opened. I spent hours in this visit exchanging with citizens who had played a key role in this historic event, people that even have today the memory how they fear to be attacked or killed by the tanks, by the Secret Service. They told me that in Sopron there was Secret Service of any country of the world in these days when they were dealing with the East German refugees that were waiting something happened to pass to the other side. And when I asked to one of these leaders, but what is the difference between opening the door yesterday to such family and people that want to move, to escape, and today the border toward other people that are asking to enter? And the answer was shocking myself, but giving me a clear message. Yes, because in this time we need to allow people that were in to go out to reunify. Today we have to stop people that from out want to come in. So the border have different meaning, even with people that have put at risk their life. In these people, to allow a change happen and to take the human pain, the human sufferance on board. I think that at the very end, what I learned from this first traveling and also many other meetings in many countries during this 2-year presidency, I think that we have done a very poor job to reconcile our collective historical memories. We have created a huge single market, a common currency, but it seemed we have failed after the reunification of Central and Eastern Europe countries in our EU family to create a common approach to Europe, past based on the foundation of European core values as humanism, tolerance, solidarity, democracy, rule of law. Today, after Belfast and Sopra, I am in Berlin celebrating the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, of this peaceful revolution. And yet again, the borders and barriers of the mind remain strong. 1/3 of Eastern Germans feel that they are second-class citizens. These all the polls and the data we have and demonstrate. In January, I am planning to be in Nicosia, Cyprus, where another hard border still exists, dividing the community, dividing the family. You see, barriers of all sorts still exist, and not only between East and West, East and West, but also between the South and the North of Europe, driven by differences in income and living standards, by different historical and political narratives, and also by a feeling of being left behind and not heard by political decision makers. Many citizens no longer feel represented by mainstream political parties, and many feel lost, facing the enormous acceleration. It was not the end of the history. It has been an enormous acceleration of history, of changes, of challenges, of transition, of uncertainty. The fall of the wall was widely heralded as an historical milestone in the spread of Western democratic values. On this 30th anniversary, we should make no mistake. 89 marked the end of a chapter in history and not the eternal supremacy of the Western liberal democracy, as Francis Fukuyama predicted. Today, the world is more complicated than we ever anticipated. The populist voices increasing heard in many different countries seems to agree only to one thing. They accuse the elite, be this the national government or the European Union, of not listening to people, issuing a vague and confused call for a need to take back control. So looking back to the May 2018 European Parliament election, while we are very glad that turnout was higher than expected and the highest after 15 years, we can surely say that there was something more at stake than turnout only. The question of the possible increase in vote for extremist parties. All around Europe, we are registering rising authoritarianism, nationalism, populism, all threaten the values around which the European project was built. Hate speeches, violent confrontation, aggression against minorities, rising anti-Semitism are back. Are not simple ghosts. They are back. These ghosts of our past are becoming a new reality. As I was telling yesterday in another conference, in this day I am particularly shocked by one last event happened in this day in Italy. It concerned a woman, 89 years old. At the age of 8, she was expelled by the school. At the age of 13, she was arrested. At the age of 14, she was kept in Milano and sent to Auschwitz-Birkenau, from where she survived. Today, she is a senator for life of the Italian Republic, and she started a fight against the rising anti-Semitism and racism and so on. And on Thursday, the state decided to put her under special protection 24 hours per day by special forces of police because she is threatened to death every day by hate speech, by attack, and by internet, at least 100 messages per day in the last month against her. One of the, just last week, that decided the police to go in this direction was one member of a party that is in our parliament, that until a few months ago was expressing the Minister of Interior of my country. That is the party that got the highest level of vote in the last election, that referring to one intervention of Liliana Segre, that's the name of this lady, says, unfortunately, they do not finish the job. We are ready to do. These are the level of threat and attack. This is happening in my country as in many others. This is a signal of tremendous alarm for our society. More general, many citizens simply do not believe anymore in the European project, nor do they think that you can improve their lives or the ones of their children. A very recent survey carried out by the Brussels-based think tank Friends of Europe revealed that 60% of Europeans are not so sure they would miss the EU if they were gone. I think here there is a sort of general misunderstanding as for the British citizens. Now, some of them are discovering that Brexit will cost concrete consequences on their life, because the intrusion of the goods done by European Union has been so vast in every sector of our life that we do not have anymore the impression that what happens is decided together, have to deal with the quality of our life, the quality of our food, the protection of our health, the standard of our salary, the security of our pension, the protection of our enterprise, the protection of the savings. We do not think that they are connected. So people are thinking that if we will destroy this bad institution in Brussels that costs a lot, we can be more happy. As Trump said just a few days ago when he was meeting another time Farage and others, calling that also Italy has to go out, not only for the Eurozone, but also for Europe, because Italy will become more free to grow, and America will allow a new agreement with Italy to become a free country from this bureaucratic and autocratic system that is. And this narrative is going on. And perhaps in this survey of Friends of Europe, there is most of them. This growing division between us and them are increasingly based on the demand for dignity and recognition, accompanied by a powerful return of identity based on communitarian demands. They are intertwined with a widespread process of social narcissism in which the very concept of the common collective good is sometimes lost. Walls are being built against foreigners. There is a return to protectionism, isolationism, and the search for an enemy, even in trade relations. And you know that trade opening market today represent the 75% of the world GDP. The 75% of the world GDP is generated today by trade. So closing the market, putting new barriers, entering in trade wars as US towards Europe, on China, US, will destroy wealth for everyone. Solidarity is being rejected. Troops sometimes are even being deployed on some of the European Union external borders, or even internal, when the Austrians decide to reput the troops on the border of Brennero to protect the entering of migrants from Italy. And we know that this border was the border of war, and there's an international treaty that allows a special situation for the Tirolo under the international protection. After 30, and without mentioning, of course, the case of Brexit, that is the still ongoing divorce of a country that has decided to go to the divorce, but has not still decided how to go to this divorce, and is still in the trap of their decision. They are incapable to construct a new narrative. After 30 years of opening borders and building a world based on regulated but open markets, open and increased circulation of goods, capital, and people, unfortunately, the walls, even the physical one, are growing. When the Berlin Wall crumbled, there were in the world only 17 walls. With the Berlin fall, they became 16, dividing countries and communities. Today, thanks to very good research done by a Canadian researcher, the walls that has been numerated are more than 170 all over the world, plus other 7 under construction. And some of them are built to stop migrants and refugees, creating further pain for people and a lot of business for smugglers. Therefore, it would be a big mistake to think that we can go on in this situation with business as usual. Just as the reasons behind the current situation are complex, possible pathways towards solution are equally manifold. Let me thus speak out two based on my intimate conviction. One concerns the participation of civil society and the other of culture. As the President of the European Economic and Social Committee, representing as European institution the voice of organized civil society, we are a parliament of 350 people representing employers, workers, consumer, agricultural, liberal profession. We are the oldest democratic assembly in the European Union. We were established 1 year after the signature of the Treaty of Rome. We celebrated 60 years just last year. I, of course, have a lot to say about the importance of empowering citizens and organized civil society to be an active part of the shaping and making of political decisions. We need to nurture democracy by coming closer to citizens and listening to their requests, fears, hopes, and expectations. This is true at all levels, be it local, national, and European, but I would say this is especially true today, European level. Only then will citizens feel included, part of the process, and will sense the EU is worth fighting for. Europe must once again be driven by the bottom up, as it was in 1989, when tens of thousands of citizens cried out bravely for democratic transformation. My second proposal concerns culture, a priority I chose when I started my presidency, which may have been surprising to some and to many also in my institution. Yet Europe was a cultural space before it was a political project. Culture has an enormous untapped potential to become a unifying and mobilizing force for Europe. We share a common European heritage composed of shared history and values, which allow us to a sense of belonging to a joint space in constant evolution and openness to diversity. It has been told that normal people are moved by three elements: stomach, brain, and heart. Of course, 1/4 of European population is at risk of poverty, so first we have to feed the stomach. But through culture, we can feed with arguments the brain and with sentiment the heart. Because in this time of raising not reasonable discourse in the public space, just to not say others, we should feed a new mix of reason and passion. Fides et ratio, was used to say the Pope Ratzinger. Developing what I call the emotional intelligence to respond to the challenge of this world and to counterface the force of algorithm of the artificial intelligence. So culture can help us to overcome the current systemic, political and identity crisis in Europe and dare us to dream, to create new perspective. It can play a crucial role in strengthening social and territorial cohesion, in creating also growth and jobs, in engaging in dialogue, rebuilding trust. I want to tell you only two examples to say how powerful culture could be. I came from a city, Torino, in Italy, that has been for long the capital of automotive. When I was a kid, it was not, yes, I'm 55, but it was not so long ago. Torino was a great city. People was going to bed at 8 o'clock, and people were waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the fabric. 80% until the mid of the 80s of the revenue of the people living in Torino was based on the hard industry, metallurgic, automotive, Fiat. That was Torino. Today, 80% of the revenue of Torino came from culture, tourism, congress, and services. Culture has totally, this idea to transform a city, to come out from an area that is finished, has been enormous. And another example is the example of Brussels. You remember the terroristic bombs in Brussels a few years ago, and they discovered that one site where these terrorists were coming from, where part of the Belgian society was the quarter of Molenbeek. That is just close to the center. I was living at 500 meters of this quarter, that is the center, Place Sainte-Catherine. And the King of Belgium decided as an act to restart, to reconquer this quarter, to go there and to establish a cultural center, to use culture as a way to reopen a public discussion in this space of the city and to dialogue with the people. Culture can bring hope, new narratives, and a second renaissance to Europe. The historical renaissance, let me to say as an Italian, was a very powerful and vast cultural and humanistic evolution which gave citizens cultural and technological tools. The tools also of civic involvement and a new form of governance so they could act as protagonists of their lives. The Renaissance founded the modern transformation of Europe, allow Europe to pass from the Middle Ages to the modern Europe, and give us the strength to move forward. Homo faber ipsius fortune, the man is the artisan of his fortune. Today, we need a similar process. We need to put culture at the center, giving meaning to our European project. And we need to put citizens at the center of this process, helping them to shape our own destiny. It was the philosopher Elie Wiesel who said that we must see in every person a universe. Just as despair can come to one only from the other human beings, hope too can be given to one only by other human beings. Together we must do more to diffuse conflict in our neighbors. Culture and citizens together, there can be a driving force of doing this, and I think that inspired by our own European history, we should together build a new renaissance, what I call the renaissance for a new utopia. Thank you.
I'm Göran Lambers from. Hello. Thank you for a very inspiring speech. I'm Göran Lambers from Sweden. How can we convince people in Europe that the EU is a good thing? Do we need more storytelling like the one you just gave us about the 89-year-old? Why don't people understand? Ordinary people, that is.
How to convince the Swedes to come to the Eurozone?
We have become too relaxed. We cannot convince others if we are not convinced. So start to rethink to the reason as we engage. Tend to think that the negative side that is still a minority but very vocal can only be fighted by a positive storytelling, as we are saying. But we are the author of the storytelling. It's not the communication department of the Commission. It's not the director of communication of the Parliament. We all, in our ordinary life, can be the men and the women that can counteract with the positive storytelling. So let's do.